House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is, quote, optimistic Democrats can reach a deal with the White House on a coronavirus stimulus package. The House's top Democrat is setting a deadline for tomorrow for a new bill. She says that's the earliest a package can get done before Election Day. President Trump has indicated he wants a large deal done, but it is unlikely Senate Republicans will agree. For more, I want to bring in CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes in our D.C. bureau. Hi, Nancy. So why is the Speaker issuing this deadline?
Well, if you just look at the calendar, Tanya, we're now 15 days out from Election Day. And so if the two sides wanted to be able to hold a vote in the House and the Senate before Election Day, you just got to count backwards. You know, you've got to bring the entire House back into session. They're all in their home districts. Got to give them a few days notice to do that. Whatever deal they put into, they sign off on, it then has to be put into legislative text, which takes a few days. So, I think it's pretty conservative to say that if you want a deal that the House and Senate can vote on sometime in the next 2 weeks, you'd probably have to be cutting that deal by tomorrow or the next day. The problem is that they are still haggling not just over numbers, not just over the bottom line, but also over the language, which Democrats in particular argue really matters a lot when you're talking about setting up a national testing and tracing strategy. And so it's very difficult to see how they get that done. And when she set that 48-hour time limit, that was over the weekend. So we're a lot closer to the deadline now. And the Treasury Secretary, who's been her chief negotiating partner, is now in the Middle East on official business. So that makes things even trickier.
And Nancy, no one seems more eager to get a deal done than the president himself. Here's what he said on his way to a rally yesterday in Carson City, Nevada. Let's listen.
We're talking about it. I think Nancy Pelosi maybe is coming along. We'll find out. We want to do it. I want to do it at a bigger number than she wants. That doesn't mean all the Republicans agree with me, but I think they will in the end. If she would go along, I think they would too, on stimulus. So let's see what happens.
So, Nancy, why does he keep saying that Senate Republicans are going to fall in line? They certainly aren't indicating that. I mean, they've indicated they won't back a stimulus package the size of what House Democrats and now the White House seem to be discussing, right?
Well, I think one of the reasons for their apprehension is in that clip that you just played, the inaccurate statement that the president made that he actually wants a bigger deal than Nancy Pelosi. That is just not true. Nancy Pelosi has been bargained down by the president and his Treasury Secretary from her original $3.4 trillion to now $2 trillion. And the president actually walked away from the negotiations a couple of weeks ago because she wouldn't come down even further. So for him to now say that he actually wants an even bigger deal than she does indicates to you one of the reasons why Republicans are so skittish. They just don't trust that the same president who today says he wants a deal won't be the same president who a couple of days from now, if it gets a lot of negative publicity in conservative media, won't completely change his mind and leave them hanging. So that's number one. Number two, a lot of these Republicans in advance of the election, those who are not running for re-election, are really retreating to their sort of original fiscal conservatism, which they say is the bedrock of a party principle. And so a lot of Senate Republicans who aren't up this cycle are saying we'd really be betraying our values to sign off on another $2 trillion deal. But the ones who are running for re-election are a lot more open to it because they want to be able to show their voters right before Election Day, hey, I'm really working hard for you. Look at what I've just passed, all of this money that will go into your pocket. And so there really is a schism there within the Republican Party.
Right. So is there any direct line of communication between the president and some of these Senate Republicans on talking about backing a somewhat larger package, or are they just listening to, the sound bites, from the president the same way we are?
He hasn't really been lobbying them one-on-one. He's mostly been focused on his re-election campaign. He has had a couple of conversations with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, where McConnell made it very clear to the president that Senate Republicans were not on board with what the president wanted to do and that they supported a much smaller package. And so McConnell is really broken with the president here, made no bones about it. He's actually going to be putting a plan on the Senate floor tomorrow for an initial vote vote. It's about a quarter of the size of what Speaker Pelosi has been negotiating with the Treasury Secretary, but that's a number that a lot more Republicans are comfortable with. The problem is that Senate Democrats are looking over at that big negotiation and saying, no, that's what we want. That's what we think measures up to the problem that American families are facing right now. And so they're going to go ahead, most likely, and reject this Mitch McConnell plan. And then we're sort of back where we started, where the two sides are kind of in a standoff in advance of the election.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you say that some of these Republican, senators are going back to their bedrock policies of fiscal conservatism, because this leads into my next question about the campaign. We've now seen two Senate Republicans who are up for re-election, Texas's John Cornyn and Nebraska's Ben Sasse, sort of distance themselves from the president in recent days, and that has led to attacks from the president, which used to be what everybody feared. Are you seeing a shift, in the party? But before we talk about that, I do want to play the attack that the president made on Sasse yesterday, where he called him a wimp. Let's listen.
Some of them are Flake, Corker, they're gone. But now we have this guy Sasse, wants to make a statement. Little Ben Sasse. The Republicans have to stick together better. You don't see that. But one thing I respect about the Democrats, they stick together.
So it seemed that, raising the president's ire was something that Republican lawmakers feared almost more than anything. Are you seeing that more Republican senators are perhaps trying to create a little space between them and the president?
Absolutely, and I don't think it's an accident that it was Ben Sasse and John Cornyn, two senators who are up for re-election, but not in particularly tight races, who kind of took that first leap and criticized the president and sought some distance after so many years of really keeping quiet. They're sort of creating a permission structure for the Senate Republicans who are locked in very, very tight races or even trailing their Democratic challengers. They're sort of saying, okay, it's okay for you to do the same thing if you think that will help you in your race. Kind of send the message to your voters, even if you don't like the president, even if you feel that you need to vote for someone else, if you need to vote for Joe Biden, go ahead, but still vote for me for Senate. That is a very risky strategy because you could also send a message to a lot of Republican voters, hey, there's acrimony, there's dissent within the GOP. It could discourage people. They might not even go out and vote. So it is a risky strategy, but clearly there are some Republicans who are looking at the polls and feeling that this might be the best approach.
Very interesting. All right, well, Nancy Cortez, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Tanya.